This is a 24-hour news update.
Good evening. I'm Kathy Saltero with this news update. The jury deliberated for just 4 hours this afternoon before finding Jason Speaks guilty of first-degree murder. Speaks is one of 4 Missouri teens originally charged in the stabbing and beating death of Rebecca Hauser. 2 others were also convicted of first-degree murder. A third pleaded guilty to lesser charges. Speaks showed no emotion as the verdict was read.
From NBC News election headquarters in New York, Decision 96, Election Night. Here is Tom Brokaw.
Good evening, and if the current trends hold, this will be a triumphant night for the 50-year-old incumbent president of the United States, William Jefferson Clinton. We have now had 331 electoral votes at stake. The polls have closed in that number of states. We want to show you the states that are closing at this hour. 220 electoral votes are contained therein. This is a combination plate, if you will, on this election night. If you think of it as a menu, this is a very powerful group of states, all closing all the way down to the Southwest and Texas, as you can see. And Bill Clinton is winning more than the lion's share. He's the winner in Pennsylvania with 23 electoral votes. He's also the winner in the important state of Illinois, where he had his Democratic National Convention with the Daley brothers helping him a lot there. In Michigan as well, Bill Clinton the winner in that industrial heartland. In New Jersey, he picks up the 15 electoral votes there, according to our projections. Massachusetts, which remains secure for the Democrats. Missouri, one of those middle border states that was hotly contested in the early going. Bill Clinton the winner, his first stop after Chicago. Al Gore's home state of Tennessee in the Democratic column. Also the state of Maryland, right next door to Washington, D.C. Connecticut, the home state of Chris Dodd, the Democratic National Chairman, in the Democratic column. The state of Maine, Clinton won 4 years ago. He gets it again in the District of Columbia. Bill Clinton the winner there. Democrats can count on that. The state of Delaware, 3 electoral votes. That goes to Bill Clinton. Bob Dole is our projected winner now. He gets on the board for the first time in Oklahoma, which is right next to his home state of Kansas. He is also the winner in his home state of Kansas, and it's 6 electoral votes. So this is how the map is beginning to take shape now. Bill Clinton in blue, Ross Perot in gray, and Bob Dole in red. Bob Dole winning in the middle of the country, but the patterns are very, very strong for Bill Clinton. He is well on his way to the 270 electoral votes that he needs to win. Bob Dole is on the board now with 14. Tim Russert, it just couldn't be shaping up better for Bill Clinton at this hour. We still have a long way to go and important races out there, obviously.
But Tom, the states you just declared for Bill Clinton, Pennsylvania, Michigan, Illinois, New Jersey, half hour ago, Ohio, they all have Republican governors. That was supposed to be an opportunity for the Republicans to hold that electoral base. They were states, so-called Rust Belt. No more. They're boom states, and the economy's good, and they opted for the Democrat.
In the Texas Senate race, Senator Phil Gramm seeking a 3rd term. He gets it, beating back high school teacher and well-known pickup truck driver Victor Morales, and beating him rather badly. In Illinois, this is for the seat of the retiring Democratic Senator Paul Simon. Our CBS News estimate is when all the votes are in and counted, Representative Dick Durbin, the U.S. representative there, will hold on to this seat for the Democrats in Illinois. In Michigan, Senator Carl Levin seeking a 4th term. He will get it, having beaten back former radio talk show host Ronna Romney. And in the New Jersey Senate race, one of the dirtiest, nastiest, muck-slinging races in all of the states this time, Representative Bob Torricelli, in Congress since 1982, has beaten back the challenge of Representative Dick Zimmer. There are a lot of people in New Jersey who thought neither one of these people deserved to win after the races they conducted, but somebody had to win, and Bob Torricelli, the Democrat, wins it. That's for the seat that Bill Bradley was giving up. In Massachusetts, Senator John Kerry, the Democrat, seeking a 3rd term. A whale of a fight. This was perhaps the cleanest Senate race, not only this election year, but one of the cleanest in years. He has beaten back the challenge of very popular Republican Governor William Weld. Kerry's Massachusetts holds on to a Democratic Senate seat there. In Tennessee, Senator Fred Thompson seeking his 1st full term. He gets it. You remember Thompson is a one-time movie actor, among other things. A lot of people think he...
Blue for Mr. Clinton. Yellow too close to call. 270 electoral votes needed to win the presidency. Mr. Clinton has 206 and Senator Dole has 55. which takes us to the Senate. And ABC's Sam Donaldson. Sam.
Peter, we have a lot of projections to make. Now, these are ABC News projections based on key precincts and based on exit polling, not on the raw data. Let's go first to Texas, where we project that Senator Phil Gramm.
Thus far, shortly past 8 Eastern Time, Alabama, Kansas, Oklahoma, and Texas.
And Bernie, by our tally, we said, what, the president has 198 electoral votes. That leaves him 72 votes shy of that margin that he must have. It's half the Electoral College plus one is the magic number, and he's just 72 votes away.
One of the sweet ones for the president and vice president have to be Tennessee, where in the last election they lost both Senate seats to the Republicans and the governorship. This time Al Gore probably is feeling a lot better about his home state.
All right, and we have a Senate race to call in the state of New Jersey, and that is the Democrat Bob Torricelli. CNN declares he is the winner. That means that that seat will stay Democratic.
That's right. Bill Bradley's retiring from the Senate. A very, very tough, very, very expensive, and very, very negative campaign run by both candidates in that race.
This might be attributable to Bill Clinton's coattails because he carried New Jersey. And, of course, Dick Zimmer, the Republican candidate, was attacked as a Newt Gingrich clone by the man who won, Bob Torricelli.
And this was one where the label liberal was used very, very extensively against the Democrat Torricelli.
One of the things we're going to determine in this election is how poisonous the term, the label liberal is, because it was used in a lot of campaigns against Democrats. It was almost a generic.
And 98 electoral votes for Clinton so far, Lynn. He has won Tennessee, Missouri, Michigan, New Jersey, Massachusetts, Illinois, Pennsylvania, Connecticut, Maine, Delaware, D.C., Maryland, West Virginia, Ohio, Florida, Vermont, and New Hampshire. And Bob Dole has 3 states in his column. Back to you.
We can all go to bed by 9 o'clock.
It may be that way.
Thank you, Chuck. If President Clinton is reelected, a North Carolina banker may be running the White House. Presidential aides say Erskine Bowles is the odds-on favorite to replace Leon Panetta as chief of staff. Panetta is expected to resign if there is a second term. Bowles is a former White House.
Brennan.
That in fact, as you saw these last 96 hours, Bob Dole campaigned from coast to coast in many states that the press thought he would have to write off if he was going to contest other areas.
Let me ask you about women. We're seeing in almost all of these key races that the Republicans are losing by considerable margins to women. The women are going across the party lines, out of your party, to Democratic candidates, both at the state and at the federal level. Is that something that the Republican Party is going to have to address forthwith right after this election?
Well, we'll have to see what the polling actually looks like. I mean, let's face it, Tom, almost everything you've said is based on exit polling. When we actually see the vote, which right now is running about dead even nationally, 46 to 46, we'll have a little better idea, but there's no question there's a gender gap. There's no question that the Democrats' big lie Medicare campaign, where they have spent millions of dollars with their union allies to try to deceive senior citizens and women into thinking that Medicare is being cut when in fact it's, as you know, increases under the Republican budget. Women are concerned. Older women are on Medicare. Younger women whose mothers and fathers and aunts and uncles are on Medicare. So these kind of very negative attacks that we've seen since last summer may well have taken their toll, particularly among women.
All right, thanks very much, Chairman Haley Barbour, for being with us tonight.
Thank you, Tom.
Good luck. Well, Tim Russell, talked a lot about Medicare, but the fact is that women are identifying a lot of other issues besides Medicare. They're talking about Bill Clinton coming out for mandatory 48-hour stays after they've given birth to a child, about education, about drugs, about abortion, taking a far more tolerant view. It seems to me that the Republican Party, however this election turns out tonight at the congressional or at the presidential level, is going to have to retire somewhere and say, what are we going to do to get our women back into the Republican tent?
Fairly or unfairly, Tom, the perception developed that the Republicans were excessive or, quote, mean-spirited. I believe the Democrats, and most commentators would agree, demagogue the issue of Medicare because it's going to go broke in 5 years. But the public had the perception that there was a trade-off between Medicare and tax cuts for the rich, and that the Republicans had, quote, gone too far. And we're seeing with the support for President Clinton in the swing voters across the Midwest, they are buying into the Democratic pitch.
All right. Tim Russell, we want to remind everybody that we still have a lot of important states that are still voting at this hour. We remind you to vote as well, especially in the Midwest, the Rocky Mountain West, and the Pacific states.
We look very good, including Nebraska, where I think Chuck Hagel is running very strong for that open seat of Senator Exon. So I think the prospects are very good of us holding a majority in the Senate, and we're hopeful we're going to pick up one or two.
Now, it doesn't look very good for Senator Dole at this point, and so I would say that and then ask you if you're surprised by anything this evening.
Well, I'm disappointed. I thought maybe the marathon man, Bob Dole, could really close the gap, and I think he did some. But it's awfully tough when you're running against an incumbent president, and especially when you got one that has taken our language, our agenda, and started talking about, you know, how he's for a balanced budget and he's even for tax cuts. And so a lot of what he was saying, I hope he's sincere about it. If he is, we'll be able to work together and get some things done for the American people in the next couple of years.
With only 260 electoral votes decided by our projection now, I don't want to get too far down the road, but did Senator Dole make a mistake or not by leaving the Senate to campaign?
Oh, I don't know. You can always look back and wonder if he did the right thing or not. I think he did the right thing. He was comfortable with it. I think he needed to get out in the country and get a feel for the pulse of the people, so I think he did the right thing. And the Senate was getting completely balled up because he wanted to do some good things for the country. The Democrats just wouldn't let him, and it was not helping, and so he decided he would go on out there. I thought it was a courageous thing for him to do.
Now, you're on the record as saying that if the Republicans retain the House and the Senate tonight, you're going to make life pretty difficult for President Clinton in the next 4 years. You want to bring us up to speed on where you are tonight?
I didn't say that, Peter. What I said is, look, we have a responsibility to have some hearings and take a look at what has happened in this election. There appear to be some abuses and some corruption that we need to find out about. But the focus of our effort in the Senate is going to be on the people's agenda. The American people voted for us to get some things done for them. We'll continue to work towards smaller, smarter federal government with less of a tax burden. And that's going to be our focus. Now, we will do our responsibility on the questions of abuses of campaign laws, but that's not going to be our principal objective.
Okay, Senator, thank you very much for joining us this evening.
Okay.
So, Mississippi delegation from the Senate goes back to Congress as it was constituted in the 104th Congress, Senator Lott and Senator Cochran. We'll be back to continue our coverage in just a moment.
The 96 vote with Peter Jennings, David Brinkley, and Cokie Roberts.
Get a few more open seats, and they've got more to sweat about tonight. All right, who wants to play on words, Dick Sweat?
Got a call, Indiana, the Hoosier State. We told you it was too close to call. Now CNN declaring that Bob Dole has won Indiana. That just decided. Back in a moment.
Signs that we saw campaign appearance after campaign appearance. That's why Bob Dole, that just never got any traction, Dan.
Thanks, Harry. Quick look at our map. 198 electoral votes in the column of President Bill Clinton, 55 for Bob Dole, including Dole winning Texas. But look at these states that still have not been decided in the presidential campaign. Georgia, South Carolina, Indiana. Let's go to Indiana. Our CBS News estimate is that in the presidential campaign, when all of the results are in and counted, Bob Dole will have carried Indiana. It was close. President Clinton managed to make it closer than Democrats usually do in Indiana, but our estimate is when all is said and done, Indiana goes to the Bob Dole column. So that means in the electoral vote count now, President Clinton has 168 electoral votes. Bob Dole has 67. It takes 270 needed to win. I want to remind you that the polls are still open in many, many states in the upper plains and upper Midwest and out in the West. For those of you where the polls are still open, please go out and vote. Your vote does count, and count plenty. Rita Braver is in Little Rock, Arkansas. Rita, are they talking landslide yet for President Clinton?
I really don't think that they are feeling strong enough at this point to talk about a landslide, Dan. But, you know, as you were calling some of those Senate races a little while ago, I couldn't help but remember that the president has really campaigned hard in some of those places just in the last few days, hoping to make a big difference. He made an emergency visit to Massachusetts for Kerry. He went to New Jersey for Torricelli. So he's got to be feeling pretty good that it might have at least helped. And especially because 2 years ago, when he was in bad shape, There were a lot of Democratic candidates who did not really want Bill Clinton on the same stage with him. That was different, and the president didn't really ask voters to give him a Democratic Congress this time, but what he did do, what he kept pointing out, and what they think worked was, they say, of course, that it was the Republicans who tried to shut the U.S. government down. Dan?
Thanks, Rita. Now, we mentioned the word landslide. Let me remind you, as you look at the map, that there's no assurance yet that President Clinton has even been reelected, much less talk of a landslide. He is off to a very strong start, having, with 270 electoral votes needed to win, President Clinton has 198 to Dole's 67. But let's go to Kevin Phillips, our CBS News consultant. Kevin, over the years, the definition of landslide has changed. I remember when George Bush won in 1988, he won by, what, 6 or maybe 7 percentage points, and Republicans called it a landslide.
Well, that's right. If you think of a landslide in terms of a sweep in the Electoral College of 3 or 4 to 1, sometimes it can happen at 6 or 7 points. Usually it takes about 8 or 9% margin. Now, the president seems to be running more strongly, and certainly is in states like Ohio, New Jersey, Florida, than he did back in 1992. So if he's kicking up his margin by a couple of points, we're closing in on the landslide level. That's to say 8 or 9%. And if you start getting to that point, 8 or 9 percentage points margin, then you're probably getting to the point where you get 400 electoral votes, and that's a landslide in the Electoral College. So this is what we have to start watching for.
And also, we're going to be watching how the House votes go as we roll across the timeline across the country. And those of you at home in states with the polls still open, you can be the deciding difference as to whether Speaker Newt Gingrich and the Republicans can retain control of the House of Representatives, or whether the Democrats take control of the House, or for that matter, the Senate, and the presidential race is far from decided. Here's the point. Americans hold the greatest power in the world, and that is the power to steer this great nation. That's a tremendous power.
He could run once again in the year 2000. He is the kind of the happy warrior of the Republican Party. So Jack Kemp, who was a bit of a surprise choice for Bob Dole, went out and talked a lot about the importance of a tax cut and economic populism, but he never was able to attract to the Republican Party the people that he feels closest to, Tim, a lot of the people who are in the lower parts of the economic spheres in this country.
And Tom, it's interesting, Jack Kemp was going to be the outreach to minority groups, to new immigrants. In the end of the campaign, Bob Dole aggressively campaigned against affirmative action, against some of the immigration changes, and Jack Kemp got a bit concerned about that. Looking at some of these early returns in states like Florida, you wonder whether or not Jack Kemp wasn't right in the very beginning of an inclusive Republican strategy. However, his unwillingness to be the pit bull, the attack dog, earned him a lot of criticism from Republican insiders. They expected that was part of his role as a VP candidate.
Yeah, and one of the arguments that he had, I think the most difficult making, obviously, was that we need to do something about this economy. He kept talking about it's the slowest growing economy in the 20th century. But all of our polls indicate people are pretty happy with where they are economically. They think the country's on the right track, and they're better off now than they were 4 years ago.
Ironically, the last quarter, the economy only grew at 2.2, but the perception is the economy is very strong.
All right. We'll be back with more on Decision 96. More states, more elections for the House, the Senate, the governorship, and for the big enchilada, the presidency of the United States.
North Carolina for Jesse Helms, the Republican. But we have some House races in North Carolina, and these numbers now, the 2nd District, these numbers are much too early to believe. They're just a couple of precincts reporting, but this is a freshman Republican who is very much endangered, Mr. Funderburk in North Carolina. So maybe you'll see a Democrat winning there. And here again, in the 4th District in North Carolina, this is again, these numbers are too early, but this is a rematch of David Price against Fred Heineman. Heineman defeated Price 2 years ago. Now Price might be defeating Heineman. So people could be voting Democrat for president, Republican for Senate, coming back voting Democratic for the House of Representatives.
What I'm incredibly struck about when doing my homework for the House, and we have to be brief about this at the moment, is how it was a liberal extremist versus a conservative extremist in one race after the other.
And what people wanted in each case was moderate, and each candidate tried to show the other guy was the extremist while he was the moderate. The truth is there's a good many extremists out there.
Going into tonight, did you think that the House was really going to be as close as it appears to be turning out to be? Not as close, perhaps as slow.
I have thought that the House would be very, very close going into tonight, that the Democrats were likely to pick up some seats, but that they were already close and likely to get closer.
Okay, thanks very much, Koki. We're going to cut away again now so that you across the country can rely on your local stations to get a better feel of what's going on in your neighborhood. Subscribing to what the late Speaker Tip O'Neill said, all politics is local.
You know, I think many of these calls so far, Mr. Dole is not surprised. He had virtually written off Pennsylvania, Illinois, and New Jersey. He didn't spend any time there. He decided to go and invest a lot of time in his last few hours in such states as Missouri, Tennessee, and Michigan. The big shocker to him has to be Michigan. He really thought he had a chance in Michigan. He went there several times in the last week or so, and it didn't work out. In Texas, he did go there one last time, and that has turned out all right for him. But I think at this point, they are not surprised at anything. I was talking with Mr. Dole's campaign manager just a day or so ago, and he said that he thought everything was going to where they had a chance until they got to California over the weekend. And at that point, there was just something that didn't seem right. And I think that they're prepared for everything that they're seeing here tonight. I don't think they're going to be surprised at the way it's going so far, even though you've not called it yet. Dan?
Thanks, Bill. Paul, Zahn, any new results in the gubernatorial ballot?
There are, and I just heard some of the Macarena music. This is Macarena time for the Democrats tonight because of the 11 races we're following, six of them have gone to the Democrats so far. In Missouri, Democratic Governor Mel Carnahan reelected despite being called the tax man Carnahan by his opponent because he raised taxes for education while she promised a $600 million tax cut. In Delaware, Governor Tom Carper.
Tonight. Germs on your hands can come from your nose, and the germs on your ankles can come from your toes. That's why there's an antibacterial Lever 2000 in bar or new liquid body wash.
Lots of rain through
will be 50% or under. It's awfully tough to run it against an incumbent president, especially one that is talking, the Republican position. He talked about less government, he talked about less taxes, and not a lot else, and that's an agenda that we believe in. But if he does win, the important thing is for us to do the people's business, and we're committed to doing that. We're going to work with the president of either party to have a smaller, smarter government that gives some tax relief to the American people, and we'll work with him, or I still, would love to see Bob Dole in there, but if that's not the case, we'll work with Bill Clinton.
Is there any greater, more important issue than Medicare? You couldn't hear that?
No, could you repeat that? Is there any greater?
Very quickly, is there any more important issue than Medicare for you to deal with forthwith?
Obviously, that needs to be dealt with. I think there's been a lot of demagoguery and a lot of misinformation in that area in this campaign. We're going to have to address that, but the president's going to have to now provide some leadership to get the job done.
Senator, thank you very much.
Okay.
Back with more right after this.
I can tell you he is not going there anymore. One thing you need to know, Newt Gingrich will probably come out at 9 o'clock tonight and talk with reporters. Dan?
Thanks, Rod. Let's pause for a moment to remind you that you are watching election night coverage on CBS.
Not only is it filling up here in the Grand Ballroom, but there's another reason why people are getting excited, and that is because Jim Russ Lightfoot arrived. You're looking at tape that was shot only 10 minutes ago. Jim Russ Lightfoot arriving here at the hotel from Cedar Rapids. Now joining me live is Brian Kennedy, chairman of the state Republican Party, and we're going to talk a little bit about this race. Now I just talked with Lightfoot, and he said that his people are telling him that he is ahead by one or two points. What can you tell us about this race?
Well, we know it's a very close race. All the polls indicate in the final days that the two candidates were coming together. Jim Ross Lightfoot had a lot of momentum, but what's key is what's happening right now, and that's people going to the polls. What I'm hearing and the way the turnout is today, I think we're going to have a real very, very close race, and we'll just have to wait another couple hours before we know the outcome.
It seems like Jim Ross Lightfoot got a lot of momentum maybe in the last week or the last week or two. What do you attribute this last-minute surge to?
A lot of people weren't paying attention to this election until the final days, but I think when people looked at the differences between Jim Ross Lightfoot and Tom Harkin, the choice was clear. Jim Ross Lightfoot's a Midwestern common-sense conservative. Tom Harkin's an East Coast liberal. Jim Ross Lightfoot lives in Iowa, makes his home in Shenandoah, keeps his family there and his business there. Tom Harkin's moved off to Virginia. He no longer is in touch with Iowa. So it was those type of differences that I think attributed to the momentum Jim Ross Lightfoot has.
Okay, thanks a lot, Brian Kennedy, State GOP Chair. Thanks for joining us. Now back to you guys in the studio.
All right, thanks very much, Lena, and stay with it, and we'll stay with you. Tom Cox, by the way, live at Democratic headquarters at the Des Moines Embassy Suites Hotel.
That's right. And Tom, what's your reading on the mood there? Lightfoot's people say he's ahead at this point. What are Harkin's people saying?
Well, I think it's really too early to tell at this stage, believe it or not. Things are just starting to pop around here. Folks are trickling in, but again, they're out there getting out the vote. Harkin himself is in the building. He's been here right now. He's watching television with his family, his 2 daughters and his wife there. They are upstairs watching the national returns. But talking about local politics, joining me right now is State Senator and Majority Leader Wally Horn. Wally, you've got a lot at stake in the state level in this race this year.
That's true, and of course the Democrats want to keep the Senate, and we feel that we've done the work, and we're going to be there, and we're still going to hold 27 seats in the Senate as Democrats and be in the majority.
You've got a pretty slim margin to work with. It's pretty much got to break your way all across the board.
Well, I think that we've been working hard all the way along. We call it the old-fashioned way, and that's burning up shoe leather, going door to door and talking with people. We've also raised what I'd say adequate money to run decent campaigns, and from what I can see and from what I know of polls and stuff, we will be at 27 again.
Okay, thank you very much, Senator Wally Horn, and of course we'll be monitoring all the activities here at the Democratic headquarters. Now back to you, Sonia and Mike.
All right, thank you, Tom. Looks like that will be the race to watch.
Apparently so.
When we come back, we will hear from News 5's political analyst, Jeff Stein.
About that very race. Jeff will have observations on the race for Iowa's U.S. Senate seat.
Well, we do have some exit poll information, David, that will help us get a little more information about the people who voted for Helms and for Gant. If we take a look right now, you'll see here CBS is calling the race again with Jesse Helms winning. Take a look at closer information about the voters in this race. Gant drew most of his support from self-described moderates who comprised almost 6 in 10 of his voters. 3 in 10 of Gant's supporters said that they were moderates. And far as Helms goes, Helms drew well among conservatives. About 6 in 10 of his supporters called themselves conservatives. No surprise there, while more than a third of his voters said that they were moderates. That gives us some idea of who voted for Gant and who voted for Helms. Jim and David?
Okay, Betsy, thank you. And we'll be back with more in just a moment.
You're watching Election 96.
And that's WRAL TV in Raleigh, North Carolina. Rich Bond, you heard a few things there that interested you.
I did. It looks like we've got, again, a situation where we're kind of holding our...
Because it's an open seat. Jim Ross Lightfoot has represented this district. He's, of course, running again overnight.
But they expect him to be back at work full-time by next year. Jurors deciding the Alex Kelly rape case have recessed for the day without reaching a verdict. They deliberated for a little under an hour. Kelly is accused of raping 2 high school.
From tonight into early tomorrow morning, expect some light rain, heavy rain down to the south of us, again up to the north.
Attacks, that's what seems to win. And we certainly saw our share of it in these last few days.
Couple of seats, but they're not going to lose control of the Iowa House unless something astounding happens. So it's really important for Republicans to capture the Senate. Governor Branstad's always said that he would like to have an all-Republican.
That Congress and the President are going to have to work together. We have some very big issues, and issues that seemingly we agree on. The President has said that we want to have more in the way of Medicare reform. He said we should balance the budget. He said that we ought to continue the welfare reform, that we need to do some things in health care. So all of those things are a positive agenda that we've been talking about, and hopefully we can work with the President on.
Tactically, a lot of people say that as soon as you guys used the word revolution, it gave Clinton the opening to move to the center. And it really told a big story about this election, as it turned out. What do you think?
Well, I'm not certain that the American people focused on that, and I think that what you're going to find out as the night progresses is that Republicans in the Congress are doing very well, because what we do know coming out of this Congress is that the job rating of Congress went way up, and so the